All right, boys and girls, it is about 8:30 in the morning here in the UK, and this is going to be my instant reaction to Lewis versus Spivak, the fight night card that took place at the UFC Apex. Now, I've had a few requests to break some of these fight cards into smaller chunks. So what I'm going to do is this will be the prelim section, with the main card getting its own video straight after this one. Okay, so the first fight was between Tatsuro Taira and Jesus Aguilar. Again, I was really surprised with the placement of the fight on this card. Taira is obviously a really promising prospect coming up. Now, the fight started off with Aguilar. He hit a really nice leg kick, and it sent Tairo to the mat. So I was instantly thrown off, like, oh my god, like, what's going on? And clearly that was the strategy. It was to catch him off guard and to go for a quick finish. And post-fight, Tairo admitted being caught out by this. And Aguilar pulled guard, and he attempted to lock up a guillotine, which is a really stupid thing to do. And I just felt, oh, clearly no fight IQ. And even though he had Tairo on the ground for a little bit, Tairo showed a lot of composure, good fight IQ. He popped his head out at a guillotine, which was always going to happen. And then he just began raining down ground and pound. And at that point, it felt really academic, which it proved to be. The impressive thing was that Tairo then, despite Jesus Aguilar having a decent ground game, Tairo did really well to kind of transition around on the floor. And he ended up locking up a nice triangle choke, a move that I really wish worked on the street. And Aguilar verbally tapped, which is, I don't want to call it a bitch move, but it's not the nicest way to for some reason tapping seems a lot more I don't know, acceptable these days. Again, surprised this was the opener, but it was a great way to start the card. Really good performance, and what a scary prospect Taira is. So it was a nice, 1-0 start for me. And this was an early shout for a bonus. I think Taira probably is going to be up for making 50k tonight. Okay, fight 2 was Dennis Tiuluilin versus Park. Now, I got this one horribly wrong. I'm just going to say that out the gate. Now, Tiuluilin was a heavy underdog. And, he started off pretty well. He had a few nice popping shots. Both men were feeling each other out a bit. But the fight was pretty much over when Park attempted a takedown attempt. Like, the ease in which he got Tiuluilin to the ground was really surprising. Not so much because I felt Tiuluilin had a really good ground game, but just at this level, for it to be that easy was surprising to me. Tiuluilin had nothing on the ground. He had no awareness of how to position your hips and how to kind of scoot out of there. I think the major moment came when Park started raining down elbows, which cut Tiuluilin open. And it was obvious at that point that, Tiuluilin just wanted to survive until the end of the round. And that's a really bad tactic. He didn't try to escape, and Park just rained down strikes. And this then led to Tiuluilin giving up his back. Park locks in a rear naked choke. And the one thing I will say, just to follow on from what I said in the last fight, is Tiuluilin refused to tap. He actually went out unconscious, which is kind of a gangster way to go out. He might get another fight, maybe, Tiuluilin, but the blueprint to beat him is there. He's so easy to take down. He's got no ground skill. Doesn't know how to reposition, doesn't know how to get off his back, which is just shocking at this level. So I went to 1-1. That was a nice dominant win for Park. And he did a nice little funny call out on Bisping as well, which I thought was amusing at the very least. Okay, so we got the first road to UFC final, which is flyweight, and it was contested between Park and Choi. Now, these are two Korean prospects. I didn't really know too much about them going into this and had to watch a lot of tape. Now Choi came out with the Korean zombie in his corner, and I'd picked Park, so I was thinking, shit. Have I made a mistake here? I was not actually aware of that. Maybe I should have done more research. But anyway, the first round was really kind of forgettable. Both men were feinting a lot, picking each other off at range. It was pretty clear that Park was going to invest a lot to the legs, and this is how the fight kind of played out. At one point, like, Choi caught Park with a light shot and put him down for a moment. It seemed a little bit more like a slip, but on the replay, he caught him on the chin with like a jab, and the way Park fell was not great. I'd be looking at that going forward if you're going to be picking this man to win. There were a few up kicks attempted from Park, which always looked like a bit of a bitch move to me. But luckily the ref, who I think was Goddard, he got really bored of that quickly, and he got both men standing again, which was definitely for the best. There was a lot of feinting, and this really took the spark out of this fight for me. Park was finding range at length with low leg kicks. Choi kind of edged the first round by getting that slip knockdown. So I'd picked Park, and I was thinking, this is not looking good so far. The second round was much better. Both men came out with more urgency. Park clipped him a few times when he was coming in. He was investing in the legs, caught him with a nice left. Park has really no chin though, and he got flustered again with a really small shot and taken down. He seemed a little bit inept on the ground as well, which will be a problem for him, because at this level, as a flyweight, you need to be extremely skilled in all areas, and I just don't get that impression from Park. He did do well to get up in the round, and I think what was significant in this round, even though I don't know if he won the round, but there were more leg kicks, and he did have more significant shots, but with the knockdown, according to the rules, that should win the round, so it could have very easily been 2-0 Choi at this point. So I'm thinking, oh, it's another loss, disaster. But when the third round started, for some reason, Park was still up on the live odds, and this confused me. By damage, he did do slightly more damage, and Choi seemed to be wearing it more, like his face was more visibly damaged. And our Choi just seemed to be steamed out in this round, and you could see that Park was getting G'd up by this. Now, there was a point in the third, right in the middle, where Park hit a really nice knee that did damage. And then he got a seatbelt grip at the back and started softening him up with little shots. And this enabled him to basically find the neck, and he eventually got the choke. So he eventually won by, I'm going to call it a backpack choke. It was a nice win by Park. He pulled it out the bag, in my opinion. But I felt a little bit lucky to be starting off at 2-1, because I think Park was losing that fight regardless of what the live odds were saying. Okay, next fight. This was over in a flash. It was Kazama versus Nakamura at bantamweight. Nakamura looks incredible. They both wasted no time. In fairness to Kazama, he went in there going for it as well, but Nakamura knocked him down within 10 seconds. Kazama looked like he was very reckless in there. Got up despite getting dropped, and then came in again and just got brutally caught. He was actually falling. He was actually asleep on the way down as he was falling. It was an easy win for Nakamura, who looks like a real problem. Apparently this guy's a wrestler, which is a really scary thought, because the dude has very heavy hands. I did pick Nakamura by KO, but I didn't expect it to come like this. I thought it was going to be a bit more drawn out. Very early shout for a fight bonus as well, which at this point I'm thinking that's going to be hard to top. He also speaks a little English, which is really going to help his marketing. A very impressive performance. If he can wrestle as well, this guy might be an issue. He might be an issue. Bantamweight's highly skilled, but I can see this guy being a problem, Anyway, this took me to 3-1, so I'm feeling a little bit better about things. Now, the next fight. Oh, this was a weird one. It was Lee versus Ja. Now, this was again for another guaranteed contract. By the way, just as a side note, this is a really filthy tactic that I think the UFC did. They do it with the Contender Series, and it's really gross. It's basically like a cheap style tournament where you get fighters from regional scenes to come in and fight, and you pay them peanuts. Anyway, I'm going to go into this a little bit later in another video, because I don't want to get bogged down by that. Now, this was a very interesting style matchup, because Zar is obviously a grappler, very, very experienced, and Lee had finished his last two fights in a total combined 78 seconds, I think is what was mentioned. So it seemed to me that this clash of styles was going to be interesting. I picked Lee, and I said it was going to be close, and that's exactly how it turned out to be. Really close fight so far. Now, Lee looked like a massive weight bully in there, and that initially gave me confidence. He walked straight over and went for it, but then got caught in a body lock. Yi got some control time, and he got the takedown, and this felt like a significant moment in the fight. Lee made his way back up and started fighting the hands. The first round felt like it was entering Ja's domain, and I think he took that round pretty clearly. I think he won the first round. What was really telling as well is, despite looking bigger and stronger in there, Lee looks very easy to move around, and that does not bode well for him at featherweight. There are some really good guys at featherweight. Now, rounds 2 and 3 were a little bit more clear-cut. Lee seemed to land more significant strikes and damage in those 2 rounds, and based on the rules of MMA, that is how it should be scored. What baffled me, though, is Lee did get the decision, and it was split, which I can understand. It was a close fight. But the strange thing was that Ja got given 3-0 on one of the scorecards. It's 30-27, which really confused me. I don't know how you can give that, but it was a strange one. Anyway, I think close fight, decent stylistic matchup. And Lee gave some really funny call-outs at the end. I've never heard somebody list off call-outs. I've heard people call people out, but I've never seen people give like a list of like 4 or 5 people they're going to go through one at a time, which was quite unique, and that kind of made me laugh. He had Tapuri on that list as well, and I was like, come on, he will literally molest you. So enough of that silliness. But no, it was an entertaining enough fight. And then that took me to 4-1, and then we moved on to the main fight of the prelims. This was a very disappointing fight for me. Now, Sarajih came in there like he was clearly buzzing. I always love to see that. But it really surprised me that the way the first round played out. Like, both men are usually stand-up fighters. But Gibli was really smart in kind of changing things up. He took it to the ground pretty early, which was probably a really smart tactic, because Sarajih in his last few fights has looked fucking dangerous. And I predicted Sarajih to knock Gibli's head off, and he clearly set out to do that. Now, the first round was dull as dishwater. Like, Gibli had significant ground time, but what I hate about when people do this is he did very little damage. He just seemed to be content, and it was actually Sarajih who was doing the most damage from the bottom. So according to the rules, Sarajih should have won the first round, but it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't. The judging on this has been poor for the last 2 years since the new rules came in, and it wouldn't have surprised me. It didn't matter in the end anyway. Gibli went to the same game plan after taking a massive head kick at the start of the second. He got the fight to the ground and just ground and pounded it out. I did feel like the stoppage was a little bit early, but really I've got no complaints. It was a very tough fight to watch, and the least inspiring of the card so far, you know. Gibli did the usual talk up about being a future champ and all that, but he's not going to crack the 15, nowhere near that based on this performance. It wasn't the worst I've ever seen, but it was a horrible and difficult fight to watch. He got the TKO by ref stoppage, and that dropped me to 4-2 on the card. Okay, so this brings us to the end of the prelims. Do join me again where I'm going to react to the main cards. Okay, in a bit. That will be followed up directly after this one. Thanks, guys. See you in a bit.